probably time to look in the mirror. Speed of the group is the speed of the leader. But let's talk about some real changes. Often, basically, if they're complacent, it basically means they're not engaged. And that's a real challenge in the workforce, small and large companies, is the level of engagement of your staff and your employees. But ultimately, you are the leader and you are accountable, and you can only control what you do. But there are usually some other things that you can look at to determine what might be causing the complacency or the lack of engagement. Often people don't understand their role. They really don't understand what they're doing or trying to do. Or often, they're not trained well enough, or there's not ongoing training and education. That would be something that employees value greatly. Any types of opportunity to education and to grow and to learn, especially if it's industry specific or any kind of skills. And so, and if you aren't doing that yourself, you probably aren't doing that for your employees. So understand their role, training, where do they fit in to where the company's going and the vision. Is it communicated real well to them? Is like, what's the company purpose? Why are we here? What are we trying to do? Where do they fit in? And this is true whether they're entry level or whether they're senior level or been there for a while. They need, usually, ultimately, it's a lack of energy, and that lack of energy is because a lot of these things aren't going on. It's said that the fastest way to lose good employees is to not deal with bad ones. And I do see that often. The owner said, well, I'm too busy, or they don't like dealing with conflict. And it turns out that maybe firing someone is one of the hardest things that owners find to do. It's kind of like public speaking or something to most people. I don't know. Maybe I've never had a problem firing anybody. But it's because it wasn't a surprise to them or me. We knew where things were leading and where it had to be done. Or if you just, if you don't have accountability and some standards to hold people to, you've got high producers. You have people that are they're made up that way. They're going to work at a high level and they're going to do things. And if there's no difference in pay and recognition, in feedback between them and someone that is not only just not doing the minimum, but not doing close to the minimum, you're going to have complacency. You're going to have a lack of engagement. So make sure that there are clear ways to measure how someone is succeeding, a scorecard in some way, and make sure those, that you're trying to fill those roles with, top performers. It may go back to also hiring processes. You might have hired folks that just aren't right for your culture. And you might be lazy about it. I find that, or you might need to pay someone to help you do that so that you have the right kind of folks on staff. You often hear these days, especially in trade companies I work with, folks involved in the trades and various things, is first of all we're hired to character first, and then we'll train them once they're they've got the work ethic, they've got some skills in certain areas that they can identify. Then they'll work on training them and like an apprentice role. But if you're not doing that and you don't have that accountability, you don't have those things defined, then you're going to possibly be suffering from complacency or a lack of engagement. And really, it's to you. Have they seen growth in you? I've seen it so many times. Often I will facilitate meetings or workshops with the leadership team or with staff, and the owner participates with them. Most of them are used to, when they go to a meeting or when owners do have a meeting, The meeting is they show up somewhere and the owner talks for 45 or an hour, getting all the stuff off of their chest that they want to say, and nobody hears a word they're saying, and there's no really call to action, and it just doesn't seem productive. But in this environment with a facilitated meeting, they get to participate, and often some of their vulnerabilities or can be transparent about things. One particular group I work with, a wonderful business, multi-million dollar sales, employees been there 12, 15, 18 years. But there was this, the sword was dull. We had a couple of group workshops together, and that owner participated for the first time with many of them, and they kind of saw them in a different light. And to a person after that was over with, feedback I got was, in all the years, how many ever years it was, that was the best meeting they had been to. That wasn't because of me. That was just because they had a chance to get heard. They got a chance to see, I think, their leader in a different light. And while they admired and respected them, there had been a distance over the time because things were going well. And, he was concerned about this lack of engagement and complacency. And so it made a difference, but they're feed off of your energy. So don't complain. It's a lot easier to take ownership for these things, and to grow because it's to you. But there are some levers you can pull, and hopefully that may give you a target to shoot for as you kind of assess your own situation. For that or any other topics you'd like to discuss, information is below, and I'd love to talk to you. Thanks.